Hi, this is Kevin Pettigrew, and this is 3 a.m. Pillow Talk. Today we have Sheri Shoemaker. She owns Vibrant Light Spa, which is red light therapy. And
Yep.
good morning, Sheri.
Good morning, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being on. It's actually, I'm always honored when someone is willing to be on the podcast with me. And it helps. I don't have to sit here and just talk to a wall myself.
Right?
So you red light therapy. I've never heard of that, and I
Yeah.
guess it's been around for a little while, and I've never heard of it, and I'm a little interested in what all it entails. So I'm gonna give the mic to you. Tell us about red light therapy.
All right. So, red light therapy is basically what they call low level light therapy or LLLT. It's a photobiomodulation. And the process or the mechanism in which it works is really a variety of different light therapies that then penetrate at different depths within the body, and stimulating a cellular process. So there's red light, there's infrared light, there's near infrared light, and there's far infrared light. And each one of those things has a different mechanism in how it stimulates primarily cellular processes within the body for healing. And each one of those things do different things. So when I have clients come in with pain and or inflammation, I use a variety of different radiances and depths in order to treat the condition that they've come in to have treated.
Okay.
And each one of those things kind of do a different thing, a different cellular process is stimulated,
Okay.
if you will. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. I'm a layman. Like it's gonna have to be. I'm not real. Yeah, that does make sense. So, what are some of the possible benefits? Some of the main benefits
Mm-hmm.
of the red. First of all, let's get into what does it look like? I mean, what does the whole
So,
setup look like?
yeah,
When you go into red
yeah.
light therapy, what do you expect?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I have what's called a pad-based system, and there's a variety of different red light equipment out there.
Okay.
I run a pad-based system, and that was the system that I chose for a variety of reasons because we can get very specific. So, there are beds that you can utilize, there are shields that you can utilize, there are lamps that you can utilize. The far infrared is a sauna-based system.
Okay.
Mine is pad based, and the reason that I chose that is so that I can be a lot more specific, kind of on a medical condition rather than a general overall condition, which all of them are very good. Red light therapy in general is very good, but the system that I use is pad based.
Okay.
And so that way, when somebody comes into me, let's just say I have an arthritis patient that has either knees or lower back arthritis, I can then utilize my pads to be very specific in the area of concern for them so that we can stimulate the processes at a more focused and concentrated level in that area. And then I can also use a variety of different depths and wavelengths of light to penetrate the different areas and also different things. So, usually, an arthritis patient will come in and they have two things that they're concerned about: pain and inflammation. And there are different blends of light that treat both of those things. And so, I can then utilize the different, not only be very specific in areas, but I can then utilize the different wavelengths of light to penetrate both and help them heal from both pain and inflammation,
Okay.
and then stimulate that cellular process for bone healing or muscle healing or soft tissue healing, those types of things.
Okay. So you can move the concentration of the light around, sort of,
That's correct.
if I understand correctly. Okay.
That's
Okay.
correct. Yeah.
So we have arthritis. You mentioned the soft tissue healing. That would be
Hmm.
actually pretty fascinating to me because I'm a bodybuilder, and all these guys
Yeah.
I know we're all just gym heads and muscle heads. But
Yeah.
maybe I can push that along to some of them.
Yeah.
So, what are some of the other possible benefits between besides arthritis and the soft tissue?
Yeah, so there are so many conditions right now. There's so many studies that are happening for red light therapy right now, and it's evolving every day. And so, what typically there are five categories on my pad based system that we stimulate. There's fat loss, there's circulatory, there's pain, there's recovery, and there's skin.
Okay.
So if you think about those different depths within the body, it has to stimulate at different depths. So if we're doing skin, we're at a very narrow depth. When we get down into that musculoskeletal system, we obviously have to penetrate deeper.
Okay.
Now, most conditions fall into one of those categories or even a cellular category. I have a client that has a mitochondrial dysfunction, and from a red light perspective, that's what red light really penetrates at that cellular level, is the mitochondria. So we can then also treat cellular conditions as well.
Okay, what is a mitochondrial condition? What does that look like? I'm going to ask a lot of dumb questions.
Yeah, mitochondria is the powerhouse of it's a little organelle actually in every cell of your body,
Okay.
and it's the powerhouse of your cellular function. And so, what happens when you treat with red light therapy? It stimulates mitochondrial function, and then it also stimulates ATP production. ATP is adenosine triphosphate, and I think you're probably aware of that if you are a bodybuilder or somebody that works out a lot. ATP is very important in that process,
It's a
but it's also very important to cellular processes. So now your body has the energy it needs to for peak performance. We can do peak performance, especially for athletes. We can penetrate healing at a muscle level. So people that, as you probably know, you get real sore. And so now your cells have the proper energy in order to facilitate not only growth, but healing in that particular exercise that you're doing.
okay.
So it gives your body energy. It reduces stress. It reduces inflammation. It actually penetrates oxidase within the body. And so you get a higher level of oxygen, reduced stress within your cells and also in your tissues.
Okay. What condition? What do you think people, in your experience, what are people most interested in when they come to you?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. So red light therapy is best known for fat loss.
Okay.
And I do fat loss, and but I push more of the body healing in my practice,
Okay.
because fat loss comes with a variety of other different things too. So the way the red light therapy works for fat loss is it actually penetrates the fat cells, and then the fat cells drain during treatment. And then after the treatment, we typically have people stand on a vibration plate for about 10 minutes to allow those fat cells that we penetrated to finish draining.
Okay.
Now, fat cells can reinflate. And so we have other things that we have our clients do from diet and exercise, and then also pads that we have them wear to keep those fat cells flat so they don't reinflate. Now, the way that it works is we hit it a couple of times a week, right? And then eventually those fat cells shrivel up like a little raisin and they don't reinflate.
Okay.
And that's how the fat loss works. It's probably the most well known in the market as far as red light therapy goes.
Okay.
I push more of the healing side inside my practice because for me it's a fantastic alternative to people that have been suffering from pain, that have not been able to find the right combination to help them not only reduce their pain and inflammation, but actually heal at the source of that pain. And so there's a lot of other things that happen. And I've had many people come in with a variety of conditions. And the way that I treat each person is individual and unique to them. I find out what their main concerns are in any one of those categories. And then I do some research to find out the right mix of light and blend in order to treat them appropriately.
Okay.
And so there's a whole host of things that we can do. And I mean, I can't tell you enough how many things that they're studying either currently or have studied and shown significant improvement. I on my website, if anybody's interested, I do have a tab out there that has list of things that have been studied and proven that red light therapy can treat, and it's a very extensive list. So,
Okay, it would be after we wrap up the podcast. Why don't you, if you can send me that link,
hmm
I can post that with on whatever platform I can post it with when we post
sure,
the podcast. So
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely, happy to do that. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely. So with the fat loss, I'm gonna just circle back to the fat loss real quick because I like
Yeah,
this
yeah,
stuff. So
yeah.
you're out. So you're all right. Vibration plate. That is just
Yeah.
is it. It's just a kid in me asking about the vibration plate, right? So it
Okay.
so you stand on there for about 10 minutes, and
Yeah.
it just vibrates your body. So it's
It
like
does. It does. It penetrates very deep within the body. It's a very fast
okay,
vibration, and you can feel it actually vibrate all the way up to your head. So people are standing on it. You can feel it go throughout the whole body.
okay,
And vibration plates have also been around for quite a long time, and they're also a great mechanism for exercise
okay,
or a different variety of healing. And that's also been very well studied. But the vibration plate itself, after we do fat treatment, we have people stand on it and vibrate uh, the fatty acids actually from the fat cells that we penetrated, so that they continue to drain. It's
okay.
just yeah,
And so
yeah.
on top of the red light therapy for the fat loss, you're also kind of coaching them in
hmm
exercise and
Yep.
so you're kind of so I like that well rounded that's I like
Yep.
that well rounded thing. So you're also coaching them in diet and exercise and stuff like that.
That's correct. So we do nutritional coaching, we do exercise coaching. We also have programs which I typically call the easy button. So if people are really interested in losing significant amounts of weight and doing that with a lifestyle change, we have food programs that we can also put them on
Okay.
to help them in their journey. And really what that's doing is giving them a way to understand what their body needs in order to lose that weight. The red light therapy helps them get there. But then the coaching piece helps them understand it's a mind shift, the proper nutrition, the right amount of exercise, and that becomes more sustainable for people as they progress through their weight loss journey and keeping that weight loss off.
Okay, yeah, I like that well rounded approach to it. That's really
hmm
yeah, that's a so what do you think men or women are your biggest clients?
I actually have a pretty good mix. It's about 50-50. I've been asked that question before and I've looked into it. It really is a good mix, a 50-50 mix of men and women.
Okay, I guess that surprised me. I thought you were gonna just say women, but yeah, that's all right. So a pretty good.
Yeah.
How is I'm gonna say how do you do the red light therapy for yourself?
Yeah. I do red light therapy on myself 3 to 5 days a week.
Okay,
And I do love the red light therapy. And I mean, most of my people come in and the depths at which I utilize on the lights, whether it's red or near infrared or far infrared, most of them are coming in primarily for um, fat loss or pain and inflammation. That's a big chunk of my clients. Some of them come in for the anti-aging, and I reside within another med spa, and so one of the things that we also do is we utilize the red light therapy after some of those more invasive treatments. But for me, when I'm on my table, I do typically two treatments, and that's the skin treatment, which is anti-aging, and I do the circulatory. So it just helps me feel good all the time. One of the side benefits of red light therapy, in my opinion, the best side effect is mood enhancement and better sleep quality,
okay,
and just feeling a general overall feeling of wellness, which is why I do it. And of course, I like the I'm female and I love the anti-aging effects of that.
Yeah.
So I focus on those two things. But the primary demographic that I have coming in are weight loss, and then the pain and inflammation. And that's really what I'm pushing, conditions that we can help treat.
Okay, yeah, that so how long have you been how long has Vibrant Life Spa been around?
Almost a year.
Okay.
I actually came out of laser aesthetics, and so that ties into where I'm at now inside a med spa.
Okay.
Um, and I originally started in Northern Colorado, moved back to Denver, and soft launched my laser aesthetic practice. Now, I had been looking into red light therapy prior to that to add it as a service to my practice. But when I moved back to Denver, I actually paid a company to do a bunch of research for me on the market.
Okay.
And what I discovered was that there is a pretty large saturation of aesthetic practices in the Denver metro area. And I decided at that time I would at least try to sell my practice.
Yeah.
And that way I could focus more on the red light therapy. Red light therapy is actually big in some of the other states. It's very big in states like Arizona and stuff like that. It's far ahead of Colorado, where Colorado was just starting to show a trend. And so I thought, well, I think what I'd like to do is focus primarily on the red light therapy rather than the aesthetics.
Yeah.
And that was really just because of the market saturation, right? I can be a little more successful in this market marketing something that's not very saturated versus something that already is, right? And so that's why I chose that. So that happened about a year ago. I was able to sell fairly quickly and launch the red light practice fairly quickly too. So getting it out to market has been fantastic.
That's a very analytical approach. That is
It was, yeah,
that was very thought
yeah,
out.
yeah.
Yeah, that's so what so have you always what did you do? Let's dig into you for a minute.
Yeah,
So what did you do before the laser aesthetics thing? Like what has led you
yeah.
toward the kind of entrepreneurial thing?
Yeah, so it's funny that you asked that, and most people are shocked when I say this, but I spent 32 years in the environmental consulting industry,
Okay.
operations management in a corporate environment.
Okay.
Yeah, and really my soul was wanting and reaching for more, and COVID was the catalyst for me to actually make that move.
Okay.
And so I went back to school. I started studying a bunch of different healing modalities. I've got a lot of certifications behind me, but really went more on the side of aesthetics because I was really passionate about helping people. And that's really where my heart is. So while I did spend 32 years in a corporate environment and I loved every minute of it, it was uh, a calling. Like there was something more for me, and I wanted to get out there and help people.
So you're driven.
So, yeah,
Was it hard switching from a corporate environment where you gotta be at
yeah,
work at a certain time and you're dressed for work
yeah,
to working for yourself? Was that a hard
yeah.
transition to make?
It was a hard transition to make, admittedly so. Um, and really for me, it was about I worked for a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and there was a position for everybody and a role for everybody, and everything is segmented. And I understand why. But when you go from a very specific role that you've spent your whole career doing to a small business owner, guess what? Now you have to be responsible for everything and you have to learn it all.
Yeah.
So, whether it's the marketing or the accounting or the relationship building or the sales or obviously the practitioner piece of it, there's a whole world that opens up to you that you have to learn. And that transition is never easy because you have to admit to yourself, I not only not don't know how to do this, but I don't really have anybody that can help me with it because I can't afford to pay a bunch of people a bunch of money to do that. So you learn quickly, and the transition is hard. You make a lot of mistakes. There are failures along the way. And even, my move from Northern Colorado back to the Denver metro area was me taking some of the failures that I learned in Northern Colorado and improving them here,
Okay.
and the kinds of questions that I used to get all the time and kind of solving all of that stuff. So it's definitely an iterative process and definitely not easy.
Yeah, that's yeah, I would think that going from somebody saying you must wake up at a certain time to you, even just you saying
Hmm.
I have to wake up at a certain time, I
Yeah,
think that would be
yeah,
so a little more self
yeah.
accountability to it, right? So
There's a lot more accountability to it, although, there's always good and bad, right?
yeah,
I love being able to set my own schedule. I love being able to be accountable to myself, um, and being able to make those decisions on what's right for me or even for my business. I used to say this all the time in my previous practice. I learned this. I now get to make the decision on what I'm going to do.
okay,
Let's say, for example, I've had somebody come in, they've paid for a package. We didn't get them to the finish line for whatever reason. I can make the decision to continue to treat that person on my own dime.
okay,
Where in a corporate environment, you can't really make those decisions. There's a lot of other things that goes into it, a lot of other people
yeah.
behind the scenes making those types of decisions. Or, what time I'm going to open my spa or what time I'm going to close. Now, on the flip side of that, sometimes we're up at midnight taking care of stuff so we're ready for the next day.
Yeah.
It's not as easily cut and dry. But what I love the most is that I get to make the decisions that I think are best in my best interest for me, my practice, and my client.
So
And I love
yeah, a lot more personal touch. I like that personal
that.
touch
Hmm.
point to it. That
Yeah.
deciding
Yeah.
you're gonna carry someone through to the finish line on your dime. That's actually really, yeah, that kind of resonates with me. I like that. That's definitely
Yeah.
anti corporate behavior right there. So
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So how long did you think? All right, a lot of people get caught up in a planning stage, right?
Hmm.
So a lot of people, I've been caught up in a planning state. I decided to do a podcast. I think about doing a podcast for 6 months, 8 months maybe. I'm watching podcasts, but
Yeah.
I'm not doing a podcast. When I finally decide, okay, next week I'm going to start a podcast, I buy an expensive webcam. I go through all these things. Probably spent $500 on all this equipment, and I end up just using my phone. Like
Yeah.
that stuff literally. So what did that look like? Did you jump right into it? Do you have any hurdles with
Yeah.
plan, like wanting to plan more? Like what what did you feel? How was your confidence when knowing you're going to step away from that corporate environment into something that just sits on your shoulders?
Yeah. So confidence was probably fairly low on ability to actually carry it out.
Yes.
Um, yeah, that's a tough question, but you know, what I did was I didn't even actually know what I was going to do. And I think I said earlier that I went back to school, started getting a bunch of certifications. I've got a lot of certifications. It started out though with Reiki,
Okay.
as a healing modality. And then it started to evolve from there. And so I don't think you always know the answers or where you're going to land. I think, um, for me, I just knew that I was called to do more to help people.
Mm.
And so I started exploring it. Yeah, confidence was low. And I don't know that we ever get to a level of 100% confidence. I think we're always learning as we go. I'm always, even right now, looking at other things that I can do. I started out with red light therapy. I added the PEMF, which is pulsed electromagnetic field or frequency. We've added the full on coaching programs. We've added all the supplementation so that we can really, dive into overall wellness. And you never know, right?
No.
You never know. I'm dipping my toes in these things. I'm trying them out. I'm testing them with clients to see how they go. Um, But I don't think you ever really know for sure where you're going. You just keep taking the steps and see what opportunities are or doors are opening
Okay.
for consideration. And you take them or you don't, and you fail and you move on.
So it's
It's not always easy.
an evolving process.
It is an evolving process.
Yeah. So how is your confidence? How has it gone up since since right before you took that initial step? Right.
Yeah.
I know that's probably a lot of people. That's when they're wavering the most, right before they take. But how has your confidence changed as you're building it up? Is that
Yeah, I suppose the confidence is a little bit better, but I would speak more for fear,
okay?
because for me it was it and still is. You know, you have to face your fears, and then once you face those challenges and take the step, obviously your confidence level does improve.
Yeah.
But for me, it wasn't about, and probably still isn't. It's about facing the fears of things that come up, you know, and figuring how to uh, uh, navigate through those challenges, because those never end. And so for me, it's not. I surely I have more confidence than when I started, but it wasn't the confidence for me. It was the fear
Okay.
and those challenges and taking that next step, and then taking that next step, and then taking that next step.
Okay. Yeah. I guess that makes a lot of sense. What has been your biggest competition
In the red light therapy
as
realm,
far as
my,
business in general? As far
okay.
as has it been yourself? Has it been right, like how has that looked going into business? And I'm sure you're doing networking meetings and you're doing how is that what
Yeah.
has been your biggest competition with that?
Um, my biggest competition really is, uh, well, my biggest challenge is the marketing
Okay.
aspect of it, and really dialing in what it is that I'm selling.
Okay.
On the red light realm, there's the competition for me is the magnitude of products out there.
Okay.
And so I compete with gyms who have red light therapy. I compete with, you know, products that are on the market, that are real cheap, actually. You know, you can get red light therapy pads from Amazon,
Oh,
and then also the quality of product. And, you know, there's just an average product or products that are actually fake out there
okay.
versus medical grade product, which is what I have is medical grade product, and getting people to understand the differences. And really what I started this conversation with is getting people to understand that. I mean, people think of red light therapy, oh, I'm going to buy a pad, and oh, then it didn't work.
Yeah.
And there are reasons that it didn't work. You have to understand the different levels of red light therapy, the different grades of red light therapy, the different qualities of red light therapy. So the competition for me is knowledge, getting it out there, and getting people to understand what it actually is and how it actually works, and why, if you went somewhere else and it didn't work, why that might not be the case if you come see me.
Okay.
So there's a variety of different factors in there that I compete with.
Okay.
Um,
So it's taken
yeah,
a lot of people skills. So if I was to call
yeah.
you and I was like, look, I'm just gonna buy this pad off Amazon, what would you
Hmm.
how would you handle that? How would you sell
Yeah.
like if I was talking to you right now, I said, man, you know what? This pad off Amazon is really freaking cheap. I'm just gonna go with that.
Hmm.
How would you dissuade me from that? How would
Yeah.
that look? How would
Yeah.
you
I don't always dissuade people, and I have helped people find quality products for home,
yeah,
because red light therapy is a commitment. It's not a one time we treat you one time.
okay.
There are, depending on what we're treating, there may be 3 or 4 months, a couple of days a week, right? And
Yeah,
so not everybody has that time. But if you came to me and said, "Hey, I found this pad on Amazon. It's $40." And I'd just like to buy that. I would ask you a couple of questions. What are you trying to treat?
okay.
And have you researched the manufacturer of that equipment? And is there, you know, laboratory testing that shows the efficacy of that equipment? Because that's really what it boils down to. If
Okay.
you're trying to treat fat loss and you get a red light pad, it's never even going to penetrate your fat, right? So you got to understand the different levels and the different types of red light therapy first.
Okay.
And then there are a lot of fake products on Amazon, and there are so many of them. I'm never even going to dive into all that. I'm going to tell you that you need to be aware that many of those products don't even have diodes, and diodes are the fundamental part of the equipment that actually makes it work. And so you may be getting a fake product, and if you want to spend $40, you can, or you can give $40 to me and I will thank you and you'll get the same result, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
just understand that there are good equipment out there, and there's good home-based equipment out there.
Okay.
And just make sure you understand that you have to do your research, know your condition, do your research, and then understand what it's going to take. Because when you buy that piece of equipment, yes, it's great for home use, but then there's medical grade equipment. And we can certainly, you know, there's power input, there's power output, there's radiances, there's consistency, there's all these things that go into medical grade equipment that doesn't get uh, uh, built into the home-based equipment. Doesn't mean the home-based equipment won't work. It may not work as well, or it may take a year and you may get tired of it. There's a variety of things to think about.
Okay. How are you? Let's switch gears a little bit. How are you balancing being an entrepreneur and
Mm-hmm.
having to drive, and sidestep obstacles and drive further and being a
Yeah.
woman at the same time? Like, how does that,
Yeah.
how are you able, do you ever feel your, I don't know how to put this question. Do you ever, how are you balancing that? And because you come across very feminine, the way you talk
Mm-hmm.
and the way that you help people, and you're like, I don't generally even dissuade people. See, if it was a
Mm-hmm.
guy doing that, he'd be like, no, don't fucking do it. Like, I feel like, you know. So, how are you
Mm-hmm.
balancing in your life, your personal life? How are you balancing the entrepreneurship with taking care of yourself and
Mm-hmm.
keeping the femininity alive? Like, because
Yeah.
I think that's a lost art. I think
Yeah.
um we get very just black and white thinking, and people
Mm-hmm.
think it has to be one way or another. But you seem to be balancing both.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's, you know, some of the things you learn along the way through trial and error. But certainly for me, my first, where my heart lies is on the ability to help people, the compassion, the empathy, um, holding space for people, understanding them.
Okay.
That's a very feminine
Yeah.
type quality, and that's really my foundation.
Okay.
um, and then obviously the more masculine piece of that is understanding the technology and being the leader in your field, and um, uh, assertiveness, those types of things. And they all have their place. But and really the key to balancing your life out is understanding that masculine and feminine qualities are not gender specific. They're energy, and we all have those energies within us. And understanding that, you know, in order to find balance in your life, there are energies that you bring forward at the right time, and sometimes those are feminine and sometimes those are masculine. And understanding the qualities behind each of those energies too will also help you be not only more successful, I suppose, in business or relationships, but in your own center personally. And so I look for and very aware of the energy that I'm receiving and emitting, right? And I'm not perfect and I don't always get it right, but I'm very aware of the different energies and how they impact my life and how they impact my business and my relationships with the people around me. And so I do my best. I'm not perfect, but that's, for me, it's just the awareness of what those energies are and their impact and the appropriateness of each of them. But first and foremost, I'm really that highly feminine energy. And that's what I project because that's what's in my heart.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would you, if you were going to give advice to a woman right now, and
Mm-hmm.
she's, let's say she's in a spot and she's not feeling very confident, but she wants to go into business on her own. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but she's very, very unconfident. From a woman's perspective, what advice would
Mm-hmm.
you give her?
Yeah. Well, I think the first question that I would ask somebody is where their heart is, and not everybody can answer that question. Sometimes it takes time to really know yourself first.
Yeah.
But if she wanted to go into business, I would encourage her on two things. One, on the masculine side, really research and understand all the dynamics of what that business looks like. That's kind of that masculine energy, right?
Yeah.
The knowledge, the leadership. And then on the feminine side, what is it that you're bringing to market?
Okay.
Are you able to offer that as a service? Those types of things, or even products that you're selling. It's not even just service, right?
Yeah.
And then where are your passions at? Where is your heart at? And then follow that, because the rest of it, once you start doing the research and taking the step, you'll find that passion. You'll find what's in your heart. And when that happens, you start taking the steps. You don't, like I said earlier, you might make mistakes and you may change direction. You may say, oh, I got into this. It really wasn't what I was thinking it was, and start going different directions. But it's going to start with understanding what's right here and understanding from a knowledge perspective everything you need to know about it.
Okay.
And then you can start making decisions and moving forward. And the first rule is don't be afraid to fail. Just don't be afraid to fail. Understand that that's part of the learning process.
So,
And don't be so hard on yourself.
so as far as Sherry goes, what are your passions outside of red light therapy? What are your passions
Yeah,
outside of
yeah,
entrepreneurship and the drive?
yeah,
Who are you outside of
yeah. Yeah, first thing is my friends and my family. Obviously, anytime I can spend time with any of them, it doesn't matter what we're doing. I just enjoy the people I love and spending time with them.
that? Okay.
But I love being on the water. I love being outside. I love paddleboarding with my girlfriends. It's one of the highlights of my life. I am always listening to music.
Okay.
Um, I love being outdoors. I like to hike. I used to be a runner, not so much of a runner anymore, but I do a lot of power walking. I do lightweight lifting. And I like to spend time on my own too, just, thinking, or I do a lot of podcasts. I listen to podcasts. I love to read books. And I love to cook. I am, if I have company over, it's one of my favorite things. So there's a whole host of things that I like to do. But firstly, I love to spend time with my family and friends.
Yeah, that's sweet. Okay.
For sure.
What kind of
Yeah.
podcast do you listen to? I'm gonna dig into this for
Oh,
my own selfish. I'm
yeah.
being selfish right now because I love podcasts
Yeah.
too. What kind of podcasts do you listen to?
Yeah. So I love bridging the gap between science and spirituality.
Okay.
And so I am always searching and seeking uh, podcasts and videos on how to actually do that, because I think that we are in a time now where spirituality and science used to be separate, and we're now noticing that there's a lot of similarities, and the way that they come together is quite nice.
Okay.
And so I'm always seeking out that kind of knowledge. And really, for me, it's about learning how to balance myself out, right?
Yeah.
How do we balance life, mind, body, and spirit? And so, if I can find podcasts or books or whatever to help me do that, I love that.
I am reading currently. I got referred to me. Okay. I've always read psychological books, like very,
Mm-hmm.
very nonfiction. I want to know how
Mm-hmm.
people work. I want to know how what makes them operate. I want to know how I work, how I operate. So it's very
Yeah.
masculine based books that it's like this, and this is an example of this. And somebody referred to me a book called The Celestine Prophecy.
Interesting.
Yes, and I'll send you the link to it. I'm
Yeah.
about I do audiobooks for the most part.
Yeah. Me too.
If I pick up a book and read, I'll take a nap. I don't care where I'm at. I want to
Yeah.
go to bed. So someone referred to me a book called The Celestine Prophecy, and it's so completely out of my comfort zone because it's about energy and plant energy and energy
Yeah.
from the earth and getting this energy and this. And it's a fiction book, but they raise a lot of philosophical questions. So that's what I'm in the middle of right now. And I figured out that I have got boundaries to my comfort zone, to what I'm willing to. So maybe a little confirmation bias there. So maybe like I'm
Yeah.
reading books that I'm comfortable with. So and this book is just throwing me. So it's I have figured out something about myself, and that I have got certain boundaries apparently that I
Hmm.
did not know were there with my
Yeah.
comfort level with learning things. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That's fantastic, though. Awareness is the key, right?
yeah,
Understanding that
yeah.
now you can dive a little deeper.
Yeah, and I think with the personal stuff, with digging into yourself and personal growth, I think that's kind of an evolving process too, because you might go,
Hmm.
I'm down this path and I think I'm doing pretty good. And then all of a sudden something throws me the loop. I'm like, oh, there's a path over here. So it's kind of it's an evolving
Hmm.
process too. Yeah.
I call that the butterfly effect, right?
Okay.
You're like, oh, something's over here. I'm going to take a little dive. Eventually you bring it all together.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, that's pretty. So what, we're going to close off here in a minute. What do you struggle with right now personally?
Hmm.
What keeps you awake at night? What are some of your biggest struggles right now personally? Let's split it up into personally and in business wise. What are some of
Okay.
your biggest? What keeps you awake at night?
So, I have, so this is personal.
Yeah.
And I don't dive into it too much, but I struggle on the relationship side.
Okay.
Um, and really, it's trauma. So it's kind of healing that trauma and understanding myself a little bit better. And why do I do the things that I do? And, accountability and trying to draw that back um, into myself
Okay.
and being a better person and certainly a better partner.
Okay.
And that's just really working through that trauma, right?
Yeah.
And then on the business side, it is growth, right? How do you grow? What's the right combination for growth? Is it more equipment? Is it opening more locations? Is it, a marketing? There are a variety of different marketing avenues that you can take, and many will promise a lot and not deliver. I've learned that. Those are some of the mistakes that I've made and learned from. But really, for me, the biggest struggle I have is growth.
Okay.
And how do I get to that next level?
Okay. So, do you feel like in your personal struggles, do you feel like you're making headway? Do you feel
Yeah.
like is it kind of a daily thing? Do you have setbacks? Because that's I'm really all about like
Yeah.
the personal thing, and so
Yeah.
is that how are you tackling the trauma? So
Hmm.
how are you tackling that personally? How are you kind of approaching the healing somewhat of that?
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it for me came through the awareness of you said this too, you touched on it. I don't always understand why I do the things that I do.
Yeah.
And then you have to dive a little bit deeper to understand some of that stuff. So I had mentioned a couple of days ago, I suppose, hyper independence
Yeah.
and where that
Yeah.
leads. And I I was I became very aware, and a lot of people often do, as a trauma response, right? You've gone through trauma, and then you're starting to evaluate and become aware of all of these little things that, until you bring them really from a subconscious to a conscious level. For me, one of the biggest things that I learned was that I was hyper independent. And while hyper independence actually is good in a lot of ways, it's also a repellent in other areas of your life. And so for me, I realized that my hyper independence was really linked to childhood trauma, and everybody has some level of childhood
Oh, yeah.
trauma, right?
Yeah.
And trying to control your surroundings and stuff like that. But it leads to other things too. And you don't really realize it until it becomes an awareness factor. And so for me, I became aware that the hyper independence was not actually serving me in the areas of my life that I was really trying to bring in,
Okay.
I suppose. Some, and this kind of goes back to masculine and feminine energies, but also relationships from a masculine and feminine perspective. And um, really hyper independent women struggle with relationships
Yeah.
because men don't necessarily receive that hyper independence well. Not all. Some
Yeah.
men really love a very independent woman, but there it becomes conflicts, and you don't understand the dynamics that you're bringing to the table if you can't see it. And so for me, it's an awareness and working on those things that I'm aware of that have not served me well,
Okay.
and the ways that I want to be present in my life, and how I want to develop and nurture relationships with the people in my life,
I've
if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I've always believed, and I think I've learned over the course of my diving down rabbit holes, and I have learned that hyper independence seems to be somewhat of a trauma response.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah.
it's from even an evolutionary perspective, we don't want pain. We don't want to get
Right.
hurt. We're so negative biased because we're always watching out for, we tend to focus on negative more than positive because we're watching out for that pain and we're watching out
Yeah,
for
that's
something to harm
right.
us. And that served us. That served us when there were animals that wanted to eat us, and there were
Hmm.
warring tribes. But it's so I think
Yeah,
that we carry that over, and it becomes a trauma response.
it
And
does.
I am a huge, huge believer. All right, let's say that I love this analogy and it's probably dumb, but I will just keep saying it. Let's say I go into a dark alley and I get jumped. I get beat up,
Hmm.
and I go back into
Yeah,
the dark alley. I get beat up real bad. And I do that over and over enough to where I don't want to go into a dark alley.
that's right.
So I sit in my living room and I read books and I learn about myself and I watch podcasts and I do all this and I say, okay, I'm good. I am healed. I'm fine. I'm good with that trauma. But then the second I walk into a dark alley, I'm going to
Yeah.
get a trauma response. And so I
Hmm.
think sometimes a lot of our healing needs to happen in that dark alley.
It does.
So you heal where you're at. So I feel like if I've got relationship trauma, I am going to have to deal with that when I get
Hmm.
into a relationship, because my
That's
nervous
right.
system and all that isn't nothing's gonna kick in. I'm fine. I wake up when I want. I'm fine here. There's nobody can hurt me. I'm
Hmm.
doing my thing. But the second I put myself into a vulnerable position where I'm like, okay, I can get hurt here, then I'm going
Hmm.
to start various trauma responses are going to kick in, and then I'm going to start realizing, whoa, wait a minute, I'm doing this and I'm doing this, and it's probably not beneficial, right? So
Right.
that's my biggest. That is my biggest belief at the moment is that you kind of heal where you're at, and it's such
Hmm.
a multifaceted process. You know?
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it's actually all within you.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
you do have to face those fears. And when you said standing in the dark alley to face it. It's really facing yourself.
Yeah.
You have to find it within yourself. And I think when you can do that, then you can genuinely and authentically connect with the others around you,
Yeah.
right? And that they also have to be in a place of that willingness or vulnerability or even healing process.
Yeah.
And you don't always get it right. It's about awareness and acceptance too. And a lot of people don't like when you use the word unconditional love because it brings up, maybe things that unconditional love doesn't mean. I've had people ask me, well,
Okay.
you're going to let somebody abuse you and love them anyway. I mean, unconditional love is really just the capacity to love another without the expectation of love in return.
Okay.
And so when you find that place within yourself, then you can see the other people and their behaviors or their reactions or their triggers as just different than what you had, and you can still love them through it, right?
So that
So,
so it kind of ties into unconditional love for yourself.
yeah,
And if you can find
that's
that
exactly right.
unconditional love for yourself, because you know your dark stuff, you know your maybe more destructive qualities. But if you can understand
Mm-hmm.
where that comes from, like from an
Mm-hmm.
emotional intelligence perspective, that helps
Mm-hmm.
you to understand other people. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
you got it.
Okay. Well, this has been a very good conversation. I am going to
Good.
now where can people learn more about the red light therapy spa you have, the vibrant
Yeah,
light therapy? Where can people
Vibrant
go
Light
to learn more
Spa.
about that?
Yeah. So I'm Vibrant Light Spa, and I'm www.vibrantlightspa, and I'm on all the socials as Vibrant Light Spa. Although TikTok, it was already taken, so I'm Vibrant Light, Vibrant Life, which is also my tagline: Vibrant Light, Vibrant Life. But yeah, if you look for me at Vibrant Light Spa, you'll find me just about everywhere.
Okay. And send me that link after we close this
I
out.
will.
And I can't get
Yep.
I'm not sure. I will try to learn how to put that link on YouTube with this.
Okay.
In fact, I should be
Yeah.
able to. I got a couple hours before work, so I should be able to post that link on the YouTube video because we're going to be end up being on YouTube and Spotify and then Facebook. I'm looking for more platforms to put the podcast. I'm still in the infant stage. It's probably pretty freaking
Yeah.
obvious, but so I will
Yeah.
send me that link when we close out, and I will
I will.
post that everywhere I can. Okay, and it's been
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
very good talking to you. Thank you
Yeah. Fantastic
very much.
talking to you, Kevin. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being on. It's a I always feel a lot of honor when people are actually willing to come onto it. We're still in the infant stage, so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay,
Have a great day, Kevin.
you have the good rest of your day.